This is the AP Statistics Chapter 4 review. Determine if each sample is a convenient sample, voluntary response sample, or a simple random sample. An online poll on Twitter asks about school lunches. This would be voluntary response sampling because people choose whether or not they want to respond. Taking a random sample of all students in the school to get an opinion about school lunches. This would be a simple random sample. Taking a survey of students in their first period class about school lunches. This would be convenience sampling. Can you draw a conclusion about a voluntary response sample, a convenience sample, or a simple random sample? The process of drawing conclusions about a population on the basis of the sample data is called inference because we infer information about the population for what we know about the sample. Inference from convenient samples or voluntary response samples would be misleading because these methods of choosing samples are biased. Inference can only be made based on a simple random sample. If we are trying to draw a cause and effect conclusion, we can only do this if an experiment is involved and we assign the treatment to the subjects. Determine in each of the following is cluster sampling or stratified random sampling used. Grouping all students in the school by grade level, taking a random sample of students from each grade level, and surveying all students who are selected. Because we are grouping the students by similar characteristics, taking a simple random sample out of each group and then surveying those students, this would be a stratified random sample. Putting all students in alphabetical order in the school by last name. Breaking the students into groups of 20 students and label each group. Take a random sample of 3 groups and survey all students in each of the groups selected. Because we are breaking the students into groups that are representative of the entire population and then selecting whole groups to survey, this is an example of cluster sampling. Use the list of random digits provided to take a random sample of 5 people who are labeled 0, 1 to 50. To do this, you're going to break the values into groups of 2. So every 2 digits. You're only looking for numbers that are between 0, 1, and 50. So 54 is too large, 97 is too large, but 38 would work. So you would select the person whose number is 38. 62 is too large, 78 is too large, 88 is too large, 73, 77, but we would select person 43. 51 is too large, but we would select 47. We would select person 50, and we would select person labeled 08. When you take a census, who are you surveying? When you take a census, you are surveying the entire population of interest. So give examples of sampling error. Sampling error is when you make an error on how you sample. Examples of this would be using voluntary response or convenience sampling, or if you do a sample that has undercoverage. What are some examples of non-sampling errors? Non-response of survey participants, someone gives an incorrect response, or confusing or leading questions can introduce strong bias, and changing in wording can be greatly change the chance of the survey outcome being different. These would all be examples of non-sampling errors. What does confounding mean? Confounding is a situation in which the effects of 2 variables on the response variable cannot be separated. You are doing an experiment to see how sleep, diet, and vitamin C affect whether people get sick. Students are assigned to 9 groups. The first group gets 5 hours of sleep, no breakfast, and no vitamin C. Group 2 gets 5 hours of sleep, breakfast, and no vitamin C. Group 3 gets 5 hours of sleep, breakfast, and vitamin C. Group 4 has 7 hours of sleep, no breakfast, no vitamin C. Group 5 has 7 hours of sleep, breakfast, and no vitamin C. Group 6 has 7 hours of sleep, breakfast, and vitamin C. Group 7 has 9 hours of sleep, no breakfast, and no vitamin C. Group 8 has 9 hours of sleep, breakfast, and no vitamin C. And Group 9 has 9 hours of sleep, breakfast, and has vitamin C. How many factors does this experiment have, and what are these factors? There are 3 factors in this experiment: how much sleep the students get, whether or not they get breakfast, and whether or not they are given vitamin C. What does it mean to have a one-sided blind study? On a one-sided blind study, either the person who is participating in the study or the person who is running the study and collecting the data does not know the type of treatment the individual is receiving. What does it mean to have a two-sided blind study? In this case, both the person in the experiment or the study and the person running the study do not know what type of treatment the individual is receiving. Give an example of match-paired experiment. There are 2 different ways we can do a match-paired experiment. One is having one individual doing both treatments of an experiment and comparing the results for the one individual. The other type is matching 2 people who have similar characteristics and assigning one of each to the 2 different treatment types and then comparing those 2 individuals. Can you draw a conclusion from an observational study or an experimental study? Conclusions can only be drawn, cause and effect conclusions, can only be drawn if it is an experimental study. An observational study will allow you to only draw an inference. Give an example of blocking. In a randomized block design, the random assignment of experimental units to treatment is carried out separately within each block. Now, the blocks are another form of control. They control the effects of some outside variable by bringing those variables into the experiment to form the blocks. So, randomized block design allows us to draw separate conclusions about each block. Within the block, you are going to try to group people or individuals or subjects who have similar characteristics, such as all women would be in one block and all men would be in another block. Separating males and females into 2 different blocks, assign randomly within each block, and then only compare the results within the blocks to draw conclusions about each block separately.